webinar in the SWMS TOS MPOWIR webinar series on the hidden curriculum, with this series currently focused on scientific writing and scientific publication and communications. We're going to give a brief introduction to each of the organizations that are hosting this webinar today, and then we will get started. So Jenny, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny Remarui, the Executive Director of the Oceanography Society. And as you can see on the slide, the Oceanography Society, otherwise known as TOS, our mission is to build the capacity of our diverse global membership, catalyze interdisciplinary ocean research, technology, policy, and education, and promote equitable access for opportunities for all. And if you want to click the next slide, we are a partner organization in sponsoring the Ocean Sciences meeting, along with the American Geophysical Union and the Association for the Science of Limnology and Oceanography. And we also sponsor the Ocean Optics Conference on the interaction of light and water. And if you want to click to the next slide, another major project that we work on is the publication of Oceanography Magazine, which is a peer-reviewed open access publication. And you can reach that just by visiting our website, tos.org. And we do other things as well, but I just wanted to highlight our major activities. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Jenny. Just because I combined these into one slide deck, I'll introduce SWMS next. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Katie Gallagher, and I'm the current president of SWMS, which is the Society for Women in Marine Sciences. And our mission is really to discuss, celebrate, and promote the diverse experiences of women and marginalized genders in marine sciences, as well as discuss experiences and promote the visibility of women and underrepresented genders in the marine sciences community. So how we do that, in 2020, we became a 501c3 nonprofit. So we collect dues from our members to help support our activities. And a lot of that goes back to our local chapters. SWMS was started as a local student club at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution over 10 years ago. And we have since expanded to 24 chapters worldwide. A majority of those are in the United States, but we do have 2 international chapters in Africa as well. And these chapters are self-organized. A lot of them are still at different academic institutions, and they host local outreach events, host professional development workshops for their members, and a lot more. They are really our boots on the ground. We also have an overarching steering committee, or Big SWMS, which is run by myself and other early career women. We volunteer our time to help make sure that SWMS is a success. And one of the biggest things we do is we host professional development webinars just like these for the entire community. And for our members specifically, we have SWMS clubs, such as our book club and our writing accountability group. We also have a community Slack for members. And we are sort of the overarching organization that helps provide chapter funding, as well as provide travel grants to different conferences. I wanted to quickly shout out our mentorship program. So this is a one-on-one mentoring program that we've developed, similar to MPOWIR's program. And I wanted to highlight this program specifically because we have a really big need right now for mentors, the people that are mentoring the new generation of marine scientists. We have a serious need for mentors. So if you have the time and would be willing to donate some of your time to help mentor the next generation, we would really appreciate that. And all of that information can be found on our website. And last but not least, I will highlight that we have a lot of stuff in the works for the upcoming Ocean Sciences meeting in 2026. We will be hosting our second town hall at OSM. So please be sure to add that to your calendars and join us to learn more about SWMS, what we're up to, and what we want to do in the future. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen and hand it over to Sarah to talk about MPOWIR.
Thank you. I would give a quick verbal introduction, but I'm Sarah Clem, and I'm the program coordinator for MPOWIR, which is Mentoring Physical Oceanography Women to Increase Retention. We've been working in the mentoring space for about 20 years now. So we provide mentoring mostly through small group mentoring groups that meet monthly. We also do webinars like these and professional development workshops that are mainly in person. And we'll also have some opportunities at Ocean Sciences. And I'll put a link in the chat to the MPOWIR website. I think that's the MPOWIR quick overview.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. I will turn it over to Jenny to introduce our speaker and get us started.
Great, thank you. And we're really fortunate today to have Professor Charitha Patiarachi. He's a leader in the field of coastal oceanography at the University of Western Australia, located in Perth. Using novel techniques, including ocean gliders, his major discoveries include dense shelf water transport, tsunami impacts, and the Lewin current system. Professor Patiarachi is a strong mentor to the next generation of researchers and developed a world-renowned research and training program for early career researchers and graduate students in coastal oceanography. To date, he has directly supervised more than 338 individuals, including being the primary supervisor of 302 dissertations. Additionally, he has authored or co-authored over 500 publications with 235 in international peer-reviewed journals. In addition to receiving the Mentoring Award from the Oceanography Society in 2024, Chari is a finalist in the West Australian Premier's Scientist of the Year Award for 2025. And for those not in Australia, a premier is the equivalent to a state governor. And so this is a big deal. And we're really happy to have Chari as our speaker today. So take it away.
Thank you. Okay, so we all want to write papers. I'm going to start off with some motivation. And we all have a writer's block. So what did I do? I lost my screen. Okay. So we all have writer's block and we can't fight against it. And then sometimes we really get some motivation and we're really pleased when we've actually written a paragraph. And then this is sort of the part of what we really want to do is we want to write a paper which will ultimately get published. And then in a way, how do we actually make it colorful and add some sprinkles into the donut so that people will believe what you are actually going to say. That's a bit of a story. So in terms of writing, the main thing is that whatever we do in our life, in the careers that we do, we build knowledge, and the knowledge is basically lost if we don't write it up. So that's the main thing that we want to actually writing. And writing's gone back to a long time. You've heard of cave paintings, that left records, and paper was developed by 2000 BC, then 190 BC, parchments made from animal skins came into use. In 105 AD, Chinese invented paper, but the knowledge could still not be widely circulated without no effective duplication. So 1100 AD, the Chinese invented the movable type. That meant that you could actually duplicate things. And 1455, Gutenberg printed the 42-line Bible on a printing press. So that's the start of the printing. And by the year 1500, thousands of copies of books were available. In 1665, the first scientific journals were published. Think about what that is. It's the Royal Society. And now we have plethora of different types of journals, including predatory and non-predatory journals. So why are we concerned with writing? Unfortunately, poor writing and cloudy thinking go hand in hand. If you're not thinking in the right way, you really can't write well. And unfortunately, you will only be judged by the scientific community based on your writing. That's your way of communicating what you get. And if you're a student, you write to get a PhD. And unfortunately, we as scientists receive very little formal training in writing. And it's difficult to write well without the training. And if you want a job, that's what they want. Employers look for communication skills, either speaking and writing or both. And graduate students usually commonly have writing problems, irrespective of their mother tongue. So it doesn't matter whether your mother tongue is English or not, everybody have problems. But good technical writing can actually follow a formula, which is what I'm trying to show you today. Now, some of the important things to remember is that poor experiments cannot be masked by brilliant writing. However, poor writing can mask brilliant experimentation. So writing is really important. First thing, avoid complex sentence structure, use simple and clear English, and always keep in mind that the paragraph is the essential unit of thought. I'll expand a lot of this as we go along in the system. And then, although most people have difficulty to write reasonable sentences, a surprising number has difficulty in organizing sentences into effective paragraphs. A paragraph should begin with a topic sentence that sets the stage clearly what will follow. Make the topic sentences short and direct, and I'll actually give you some examples about the topic sentences. And build the paragraph from the idea introduced in your topic sentence, and make the flow of individual sentence follow a logical sequence. Basically, one idea per paragraph. The other thing that we also want to think is that we need to have a tense. So either you actually decide when you're writing, whether you write in the past tense, the present tense, etc. So they're very common in terms of writing. What you or others did in the past should be stated in the past tense. Data were collected. And remember, a lot of people actually make the mistake. Data is plural. Events or objects that continue to happen or exist can be described in the present tense, such as in this paper, I examine the data, reject the hypothesis. Whatever the tenses you use, you have to be consistent. Be careful in using might, may, would, as in this might indicate that they are frequently used ways out of making a clear statement. And the whole idea of writing a paper is to be clear about your statements. Okay, so here I've just written a paragraph, and I've highlighted things in red: reveals, occurs, and then was, occurred, suggesting, etc., etc., and then are. So you can see in this paragraph, you basically have a mix of verbs of present tense and past tense. And then I've rewritten this exact paragraph in a different way, and then everything is in past tense, and you also have a better flow of the information. Another one I will also say is that do not try to start a sentence or a paragraph as in figure. So figure 3 reveals that as in the first paragraph. That is not good practice, because if someone's reading figure 3, they're going to look at figure 3 first. They're going to look, where is figure 3, without actually reading what figure 3 says. So the best thing is to actually write the statement as in the second paragraph, and then put the figure in brackets. So one sort of a golden rule. I mean, a lot of these is things that I follow. Okay, so the main advice, so we're starting to write a paper. And you're going to think of a paper is a scientific story with a clear single message, which has implications. So the first way to actually start is to draft your objectives. And I'm going to talk about this is things like the message you want to convey. What is this paper all about? And someone reading your paper, what are they going to learn? And the worst thing in a paper, somebody reads it and actually comes to the end and says, so what? So what is what you want to avoid? You have to actually convey that your message is important, it has implications, and it is important. So to tell your story, we'll prepare your figures and place them in a sequence to make sure you have sufficient material to convey the message. And then prepare simple declarative statements that highlight the key results. Ensure your objectives have been addressed. Once you actually got this, you are now ready to write the paper. The paper writing process: complete the work required for the paper. You may actually probably do about 90%, and you may find that there were bits missing. You may have to go and do a little bit more work, etc., some analysis. Complete the first draft and undertake an internal review with co-authors, supervisors, colleagues, friends, etc. Then you will submit to a journal. The editor sends it out to reviewers. Editor makes decisions based on the recommendations of reviewers. And then you address the reviewers' comments and then resubmit. Sort of in the Australian system is very similar to actually writing a PhD. So some of these I'm not going to cover. Only the first is basically, this is the sequence. And in some of the other seminars, we'll be looking at how to select the next webinar, looking at how to select journals and what happens within a journal. So the thing that we will look at, as I said at the beginning, most of writing can be following a formula, and this is what we will call IMRAD. The IMRAD stands for Introduction, Methods, Results, and Discussions. The early journals published descriptive papers, so some still. By the second half of the 19th century, the reproducibility became a fundamental principle. And then the methods section became all important since Louis Pasteur confirmed the germ theory of disease. And this is where the INRAD organization of a scientific paper started to develop, and it progressed in the latter half of the 19th century. So, introduction. What question problem was studied? Method, how was the problem studied? Results, what are the findings? And the discussion, what do these findings mean? So that's the INRAD in a very short part of a paper. So our structure of the paper, title, abstract, introduction, methods, etc., etc. And we could also do a different parts to this. Okay, so I'm going to go back. Now, if you're reading a paper, you're basically attracted by the title. So you also have to do some marketing to sell your paper. So the title has to be important. And once when a person reads the title, if you actually catch they want to read it, then they would read the abstract. And now they are really interested. What do you think that most people will then look at? They look at the references, because all of us are vain and we have egos. And if that paper is related to your own work, you want to know whether that paper has actually quoted you or not. So that's basically very important to remember that in terms of the references, etc. And then they will read the conclusions. And then introduction, and we could also have a study start, which can be after the introduction in the system. So we can also number a section. So we have abstract, and then we can numbers and subheadings, etc. 1.1. These are just examples. Now you actually have funding, conflict of interest, data and code availability, acknowledgements, etc., which comes after the conclusions. So the parts of a paper. The first one is obviously the title, and that is the whole paper in one phrase. Then we have the abstract, the whole paper in one paragraph. Then we have the introduction. It is justifying the overall theme of the paper, and of course, introduce the paper. You'll succinctly review the state of the knowledge, highlighting gaps and uncertainties, and then you will provide your objectives. And then introduce the method, such as the approach to be taken. And then we go on to the methods, techniques used to generate the data needed to address the objectives. And we have to make sure the method is justified to the reader, move from general to specific, and resolve all the small methodological issues within the method section. And try to keep it brief by reference to published literature whenever possible. There can be two sections. There could be, if you are, depending on the subject, can be the field techniques, and the analytical techniques, laboratory methods, etc. in the system. Then we go to results. We present the most important results first. If you're debating whether a result is important enough to include, it probably isn't, so check it out. You have to be critical and severe. Unsure each result addresses an objective, ensure that each result addresses the objective, sets the stage for one, or leads to a result which deals with another objective. Highlight your results and not your data or the statistics. Don't repeat in the results the information that you have in tables and figures. As I said before, never begin a paragraph with a figure XX shows, or never use a sentence of the form figure XX shows something. In this case, we explain what is in the figure and then refer to the figure at the end of the sentence. So the parts of the paper discussion is really the hardest section to write. We have the justification. We have to include any material needed to convince the reader the results are correct and acceptable. We can explanation. One approach is to list logical explanations for the results, discount the incorrect ones, and support the correct ones with data, models, and argument. And then the implication is important. What gaps and uncertainties have we filled? Don't want somebody to say, oh, I read this paper, didn't mean anything. But you need to actually highlight the implication and also put your results in context with other similar studies, and have to say whether your objectives have been addressed, whether you actually is giving the message, and what are the broader implications of your results. Okay, so that's a very quick outline. So let's go through one thing at a time. So the title is the whole paper in one phrase. And I've actually tried to take it out and say the title has a theme, has a specific, has a result, has a mechanism, and there's a marketing. Could also include methods. So here I've actually broken down the title. The overall theme is to introduce invertebrate. The specific, that what is the invertebrate, the predator is the mechanism, and then the result is the reduces zooplankton species, and then marketing is the result. In this case, haven't had methods. So here in a different one sentence, a new live load model for bridges carrying light rail transit. And that basically, I put a big box because all of the ones are actually included in that sentence, your theme, your specifics, the mechanism, etc. So we wanted to look at the overall theme, the key results, methods, and marketing. So I'm going to give you some examples of titles. Read it for yourself and think where you actually got this. Is there an overall theme? Is there a result? Is there methods? If there's marketing? And the first two are probably not very good examples of titles. Then two simple ones, the overall theme. And then in this one, we actually have a key result. We have the methods, and we have a little bit of marketing to say, eyes in the sea. And then the next one, you have the overall theme, which is near inertial waves, the key results, sea breezes, force, the methods, nothing. Marketing could be the location. So several examples of different types of titles that we want to actually have the overall theme, the result, the methods, and marketing to put into that title. How do you fit it in? So you may actually develop the title, but try to break it down. Have I actually covered these different aspects that I'm trying to do? So here again in oceanography and climatology, ocean atmosphere climate simulation with a model. So here we have a method, we have a theme, and we have no results in the first one. And the second one, global warming, is the theme. And then we basically have the result, increasing flood risk in mountainous areas. And then we have geostrophic dynamics of meridional transport. And you can actually see that there is a theme. Geostrophic dynamics is the method. And then the meridional transport variability may be the result. So I'm trying to give you some examples of how you can break down a title to make it a little bit more attractive in the system. So the title is important, must be chosen because with great care, because it will be read by thousands, whereas only a few will read the entire paper. So if you think of a fishing, this is your hook. To hook your audience is the title. So it's one of the important things that you actually have to think about very carefully. Because the next one is the abstract. So the abstract is a summary of the information in the paper. It's, again, most people will only read the abstract, but you still need to, once you're hooked with the title, we need to actually keep them going. And mostly, most people will only read only the abstract. I should provide a brief summary of the main sections, so the principal objectives, describe the methods, summarize the results, and the conclusions. And it's often much easier to write the abstract after completing the entire paper. So here I'm going to break down, this is a little bit long. So I've actually color-coded the various components that I want to actually highlight. So in red, I basically got the theme. So North Atlantic Meridional Circulation is the theme. And this paper focuses on the dynamics of this relationship, the gap, yet there is much uncertainty regarding the dynamics. So that's the gap that we are addressing. And then don't have to read it. This I've written all of it in blue to show the results. And then we have the implication in the end. So a much shorter one here, you can see the method and the approach. So the first sentence covers the method and the approach. Then you have the red, which is your results and the conclusions, the data. So now we have a method, basically using gliders to look at cross-shelf transects and what the data has shown. So our results. And I have the conclusion. The cross-shelf transport is similar to other areas globally. And implication, the offshore transport is a significant component in the thing. So now you can actually see how I've written the abstract and I've actually broken it down into the different components in that system. So in this particular one, in one of the previous classes that I did like this in webinar, but face-to-face, and this is one of my students who actually did exactly the same. He basically comes and gives me this one back and to say the first sentence is our general theme, sea level variability along the Vietnam coast. And then we have the gap, the short term and the long term. And then we have the specific theme is our aim, the method and the approach in green, and then the principal conclusions in purple, and then the implication. So now you can actually see how this abstract, like writing it like this, you can obviously for conferences, anywhere you want to do it, you could actually write the abstract, but actually look at the sequence, and I get people to color code so that they understand that we actually cover all of these different components in the system. Okay. So now we go from title, abstract to the introduction. So usually we will have an importance, the background, problem statement, the research gap, the local context, and then aims and the objectives. So in the flow of the introduction, we'll start with the theme, the gaps, the objectives, and the approach. So in this particular case, it is sort of, the idea was to do is to draft the flow of ideas in what I would call declarative statements that become the topic sentences. So here I have written some examples of these declarative statements. So the first one is total sea level is important in microtidal areas. So if I'm actually writing this, so this is my first sentence, then I keep expanding to actually go there. And then the next one, the next paragraph, we rarely have long-term data series, etc. So I'm actually going to look at, so here you have the approach through detailed analysis, we can identify the path. So this is sort of the start of each paragraph in your introduction. And one of the most important things in the introduction is your last paragraph, which is the one which basically gives your objectives. So here in this paper, we use high resolution temperature and salinity data to describe the seasonal evolution of the stratification and formation of dense water, which has not been identified previously. So this is the message that I got. In some papers, you basically have people actually say section 2 gives the background information, etc., etc. It's up to people. Some people like to actually show this. Some people, they don't. But if you're also in a journal which actually limits the number of words, then you may actually omit that. But the part of this is a important one. So here's another example of this paragraph to say this study uses a combination, so data, and we use this data to examine the forcing nature and the extent of the diurnal variability, vertical extents of the observed and counterclockwise. So you can now hear this is very clearly I set out. This is by using field data, we're going to address these 3 objectives of the system. Okay. And I'm going to switch that. So now we go to methods. So the reader must be told why each method is needed, why it was selected in preference to others. We provide an overview of the approach, so long-term field data, numerical modeling, and then describe the particular methods, what field and analytical techniques that you used, different methodology, and how you actually did the analysis. And in this particular case, refer to other literature as much as possible. Now we go on to looking at the flow of the results. And this is again, we start off with simple declarative statements and one idea per paragraph. So now you actually go through, basically in this particular case, you would have your figures, remember, and all you're doing is explaining your periods, your tables and your figures, nothing else, in a logical manner. And usually the results sections will not include references, because if you're actually talking about references, they're not results because somebody else's. It's about a method, it should have been actually given in the methods. And so usually the results will not have any references. You're basically describing your figures. So here we have a simple declarative statement. So we have basically 2 variables, and we can say, yep, we actually have 2 variables. There is a linear relationship between those 2. So that is our declarative statement. Then we can actually put our data, and now what can we actually say? So lower values of X, Y is less than Y, under predicts, and above certain value, it's over predicting. And you might add something like that and say, well, how are you actually trying to explain that? But I'm just trying to give you an ideas into the system. So here again, how can we actually describe this figure? So there's a sine component, there's a slightly increase in our wave as we go through, and that's sort of that's basically our simple declarative statements. And then in here is a time series. We actually say, well, there's a period where the temperature was increasing, and then period where the temperature was decreasing. There's a period where the salinity was increasing, and then there's a period where the chlorophyll was decreasing. So, I mean, I'm just giving you some ideas about what we mean by declarative statements in here. You can do it in a map. And here you see Australia. What can we say about here? Lots of things. There's two cyclones of Australia and the middle of the Indian Ocean. There is a big storm on the bottom part. There is very weak winds around New Zealand. So just going through, I'm actually explaining part of these systems as a statement. And then once you actually written that, you can expand that and to go through the system. Okay, I'm going to drop that one. Now, in results, you basically give a little bit of a summary of what we're basically going on about, and then before you actually get there. And this is where you could actually introduce your message, you know, the theme of the paper that you can actually put it in to actually give highlight that transfer of a market system. So write about your results, not the tables, figures, or the statistics. Confusing, and the results often rise because the writer does not have a clear idea of the story. And this is really, really important. That's why at the beginning, you need to know what is the message you want to actually say. And then you actually have your figures and all of that, and you actually have in a logical sequence, so you can write the story around it. Now, when we're talking about figure captions, it should not merely be a name, a table, or a figure. They should explain what is contained in the caption. It should have sufficient information so that the reader can understand it without reference to the text. So that's basically one of the main things that you need to do is while you're preparing your figures, you also write the captions in the system. So do not leave the caption writing to the end of the paper. Write them when you organize your results section. That will help you to write the text. And always label panels figure 1A, 1B, etc., rather than saying left panel, top panel, bottom panel. So here's an example. We have time series, we have A, B, C, D, etc. in different components of the different panels in the system. Okay, so then the discussion. As I said, it's the difficult one to write, but again, we can actually say we have to start with the justification. We have to provide support for the main results. This result is unique, and then we want to actually have that. The context. How does your results relate to other work? Do they agree with other work? Do they disagree? If they disagree, why? Then the implications. So why is it your results, why are they important? So in this scene, basically say beach stability and coastal flooding. And then we can also say tidal changes are important when we look at sea level rise. Hardest section to write is the primary purpose is to show the relationship among the different facts. So you have many figures in the results. This is where you bring those figures together to actually tell the story. And it should end with a short summary or conclusion regarding significance of the work. So when we start the discussion, we start with the broad summary of the results and highlight the message. Again, that highlighting the message is important. Then we bring together all of the different figures, the relationships and the generalizations of the results. As I said, point out any exceptions or lack of correlation, and then discuss why things may not be right the way they should be. Show how your results and interpretations agree or contrast with previously published work. Discuss the theoretical implications of your work and any possible practical applications. We finish with a implications or a conclusion paragraph. Now we come to the conclusions. We list the main conclusions as a summary, either as a paragraph or dot points. Key message and findings, highlight the significance and implications. So this is sort of the bigger picture. This is the main contribution. The conclusions, we do not introduce new ideas or data because it's basically, most of that has been discussed in the discussion. This is just conclusions. And again, normally there are no references. Okay, so that's sort of IMRAD part of key points in terms of different sections that we will have. So one of the main reasons sort of editing and looking at different papers, and my experience is these are sort of the main reasons your papers get rejected. And this is on the left-hand column is what maybe the referees may have written. It's missing a clear and well-defined research question or objective. So the tip is to make sure, once you've written the paper, go back and have a look and see where is the objectives. Have I actually highlighted this many times through the paper so that it is very clear? Does not adequately include existing literature or fails to establish a research gap. So again, this is in the introduction and discussion. Does not add new knowledge and insights. And then you really need to show that, highlight the unique contributions and explain why is it significant. Has grammatical errors, unclear language, or poor organizations. Proofread carefully, ask a colleague, maybe, or co-authors. Results do not align with the research question or conclusions are not supported by data. So again, if you clearly present the findings, discuss the implications, and highlight the evidence. Fails to discuss the broader implications of the findings or how they advance the field. Again, clearly articulate the significance of your findings and suggest practical or theoretical implications for future research. So, summary tips, highlight the message. That is the most important thing. The major findings, the contributions, clearly state the novelty, significance, and implications. And check that ensure the paper meets the journal requirements, proofread, feedback from the peers, mentors, and colleagues. Another thing that you should really think about is presentation. You know, when you actually, if many journals, there's no limit on the size of the figures, etc. If I'm reviewing something, the worst thing that you can actually do is to give me really small font and figures that I can't read. So the presentation is important. So, you know, the reviewers are busy people. When they open the document and it's not really in a state that you want to read it. Without even reading one letter, you actually look at how it is presented and you think, oh no, I can't go through this. So you actually have put the reviewer offside even before that person has started to read it, because you haven't set the paper out in a clear, easy to read manner as well. Okay. So that's about the my last slide. what we normally do if I was doing this face to face is that the group will actually write a objective in your research. You construct a graph, a pseudo graph to show your preferred results, and an exercise to write declarative statements. And then we write a topic sentence and a paragraph to do that. So you can actually think of doing that after this. Thank you. And I'm happy to share the presentation. I know it's recorded, but I'm still happy to share the presentation. No problem.
Yeah, if you send that, I have the list of the people that attended, and can send that out. Thank you. That was the question in the chat.
I was going to ask a question. Chari, have you had to carry most of your students through their journeys by it seems like your presentation is really refined, so it's developed over many years, I assume.
I first gave elements of this presentation in a Goose workshop 15 years ago. It was a summer school. And so somebody told me, can you do this? And I said, oh yeah, I will think about doing that. So yeah, I've done it many times in a way. But I've done it in, many times, like this is one part of it. So one, to be effective, like if I was doing in my school, we do it over a sessions of about 2 or 3 weeks. So we do one part of it, and then I give them homework, and they mark themselves and things like that. So it's a lot more discussion going on, and we take a little bit more time to do it.
No, it was really, really great. I think a lot of the tips about writing very clearly and, especially the advice about writing a very clear title that can be applied to so many types of writing. So I don't write scientific papers myself, but I learned a lot.
Thank you. And another thing that you also want to think about, I mean, I tell people, like, you have to live the paper, right? So when you say live, you actually think about your paper 24/7, right? While you're cooking, you're thinking about it. You might be lying on the sofa. When the ads comes on the TV, you actually think about your thing. You're actually commuting, you're thinking about the paper. And I don't commute where I am, but when I go on sabbatical, if I have actually like half an hour commute, I've actually got my whole mind on the paper, a whole paragraph written on the train. So I can just get off and I actually do that. So you have to actually live it. It's the hardest part. Writing is hard. It is a challenge. But you would actually take the most simple distraction not to write something. You have to force yourself to write it. So by thinking and actually having a period 2 or 3 days or more to actually live and actually do nothing else but concentrate on the paper, that's where you get the ideas coming in, and then you actually have that. Stopping and changing, it's very challenging to be able to do that.
No, that's great advice.
Any questions?
Sorry, I actually had a quick question, but I want to touch on real quick about what you just said and stopping and starting a paper. Like I stopped working on a paper for a while, and coming back and trying to finally finish it off is really hard. So I'll echo what you just said and strongly advise against putting papers down and trying to come back to them months later.
The thing is that when you actually put it down, you have forgotten where you've done it. and you've gone
Yep.
off it. And it takes about a day for you to get back to where you were and then to get it. I'm in the same
Mhm.
situation. I have a paper that I haven't looked at it for about a couple of weeks. Now I'm actually trying to force myself to go back to it.
Yeah, for sure. The question I wanted to ask, I guess just as we wrap up is what, and this, I guess, what about having AI write your paper? How is AI sort of playing into all of this now, or have you experienced that at all?
It's new to me.
Yeah.
I have no hair, you know. Uh, it's the same thing that people say, why don't you use EndNote or anything like that, right? I don't use reference because every reference is in here. It's much easier. Trying to learn something like that. So I mean, all my life, virtually my whole career, I've used MATLAB. I can get MATLAB to do anything I want to do. So why should I learn Python? Right. So it's the more efficient. It's what you're used to. You go with. Right? So AI goes with that as well. But I mean, it's this new generation of see in our case we have the PhD students, but we also have like the master students and whatever. Last year for the first time the master, I said, oh, we'll have to do this. He said, no problem, Chari. I just put it on ChatGPT. They will give me a MATLAB program to do exactly what you want. And I said, what? And then, yes, of course they does.
Yeah,
but I think it's a little bit cheating.
Yeah, I know some journals have come out and said you're not allowed to use AI and stuff. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit next week when we talk about everything from the other side of the coin on reviewing and things like that. I know we're at the top of the hour.
AI, from what
Oh,
I
no,
can
go for it.
also, sorry,
No.
is in there, is ideal. Like if you're writing an abstract and you have a word limit of, let's say, 200, right? And your words are actually 250. You've written your abstract 250, and the laziest and the easiest thing from what I can see, you can put that whole 250 words, which is your words, and ask them to give it to 200 words, and you'll get a perfect one without any loss of things. So that's a strong point to actually do that, right? But it's still cheating, I think.
Yeah, I've definitely used it for that before, but you still have to go and proofread it because I've used AI for coding before, and it's, at least we're allowed to use Gemini, and that one is not very good at coding. So I know we're at the top of the hour, so if people have to jump, again, this is all recorded, so we will have this for you as well as the slides. We got a few more questions in the Q&A that I want to address. The first one is about the SWMS writing accountability groups. So that is one of our SWMS clubs, and that is held weekly. And the call information is available on our SWMS Slack. And this is one of our members only perks for the writing accountability group. But basically, we all get together in a Zoom room and we just have a dedicated co-working hour most of the time. We're muted, cameras are off or on. But it's just a dedicated time to do some writing, and it's been very helpful for me as I try to finish up that paper that I mentioned. So definitely encourage you, Jess, to check that out. Jonathan asked, what types of programs do those who write research papers use? I assume mostly Word, Microsoft Word, but I'd be curious to know if there are others out there. Chari, do you
Well, a lot of
have any
journals have
recommendations?
templates. So the
Mm-hmm.
templates could be on Word, and a lot of if you have lots of equations and things like that, some people use LaTeX. Used to be Tech, and now LaTeX. I think there is some probably other ones that people use as well. Again, it's learning something new.
Yeah, I'm sure there are folks that use whatever Apple's version of Word is, but I feel like most people use Word in my experience.
I will say with latex, like I'm working on a manuscript right now and the journal has like a latex template already. So it's really easy to like format for your journal because you can download that. And then if you're already using latex, it makes it pretty simple. So I learned latex a while back. And while I was learning it, I was like, do I need to do this? Like, why am I learning another thing? But it is useful in the long run and it's not too bad.
Well, if there's nothing else, everyone, thank you so much for coming. Thank you again, Shari, for this awesome presentation. And like Jenny said, I learned a lot too, especially thinking about this paper that I have to write. But just to plug again one more time, this is part of a larger webinar series that SWMS, TOS, and MPOWIR are all working on. So we have next week we will be talking about what happens after you submit your paper, sort of on the editorial side and the side of the journal. And then in 2 weeks, we'll actually be talking in depth about the review process. So I encourage, from a reviewer's perspective, so I encourage everyone to attend those if you can. But thanks for coming, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.